What's up, everybody? My name is Jonathan Miller, host here on the All Things Titans YouTube channel, and today's video is going to be really fun for me because it's one of my favorite topics, and that's draft strategy. So, we talk about the fun picks and the fun mock drafts and having fun with picking for our favorite team. And when analysts, national media get to talking about what that looks like for most teams, they are far off base. And there's a reason for that. A lot of what we try to predict when it comes to mock draft season is taking a look at a current depth chart, a current roster, and kind of just plugging in holes where they think makes the most sense. But rarely what gets discussed is the draft strategy that goes into the entire process for each franchise. So today I'm going to do my best to put my brain, my hat, if you will, on Ran Carthon, Chad Brinker, Anthony Robinson, the front office team for the Tennessee Titans, and what their thought process is with their new coaching staff, with the additions they made in the offseason, to what their draft strategy is going to be. And I'm going to break down what that draft strategy actually means as well. So today's video, we have a couple of talking points here that I want to touch on for draft strategy. And the first one is going to be, how does their offseason moves impact strategy? So what they've done so far in the offseason in terms of letting certain pieces go and their additions, and what that means for their draft strategy. Now, the most obvious and glaring one is in the secondary room for the cornerbacks. They added Chidobe Awuzie and they added L'Jarius Sneed to a promising young corner in Roger McCreary, who's going into year 3 and who's played fairly well as a second-round pick for the Titans. Now, looking at secondary, they feel probably pretty good, and where, maybe the consideration for corner would probably be, trading down and then taking one in the middle of the first or in the late first, or taking one at the top of the second round with pick 38. Now that's changed, right? Like, they probably won't look at corner until late in the draft and maybe finding some value in the later rounds when they don't have another more promising need to take in that spot. So that's the first one. The next consideration here is what they did at wide receiver in adding Calvin Ridley. Now, does that mean that you don't take a receiver at 7 because you added Calvin Ridley? Not necessarily, but it very well might mean that the glaring hole at left tackle is more important. We'll get into that here in a second, but I think that's worth considering, right? The Titans haven't done anything on the offensive line that would necessarily say, we're good at left tackle, we shouldn't draft one at 7. So I think that's probably what's going to be considered the heaviest here. But nonetheless, some of these offseason moves rather have definitely made a big difference in what they are going to decide to do, at least defensively. Now, I think it's important to kind of highlight what the needs are for the team, and that kind of rolls into our next point here, which is where you select certain positions changes everything. This is my favorite topic to talk about. And this is, again, something that's not highly considered or maybe highly talked about, which I think is interesting. But when you look at the Titans' selections, the picks that they have going into the draft, and what their needs are, taking a look at the class as a whole and looking at the positions and kind of ranking them, if you look at the wide receiver class, it's been widely talked about that this wide receiver class is deep and this tackle class is deep. And what they mean by that is that there's a lot of talent at that position. Now it scales, right? You have the top blue chip players of the position, and then going on down, it scales down, obviously, with ranks. But what I think is interesting here is that the Titans, their two, I guess, biggest needs you can consider, right? Or their 3 biggest needs are positions that have a ton of depth. Now, the 2 I would highlight there is offensive line, your tackles, your wide receivers, and then, potentially your edge class, right? The edge class far less deep than the first 2. So the Titans have an interesting decision to make. Looking at pick 7, you can trade down, you can stick and pick. And if you stick and pick, you have some interesting decisions to make. You either go wide receiver by most likely taking Rome Odunze, who's probably going to be the guy that falls to 7, or taking a lineman, which is going to be Joe Alt, or Olu Fashanu, which is basically, left tackle 1 and 2, no matter where you slice it. And so you get a franchise guy at that position. But depending on who you take completely alters what you do at pick 38 and essentially can change the entire course of your draft. Because if the Titans trade down and they decide that they have suitors, they have more than one suitor, which most likely they will, I would imagine, come draft day, then they're going to have to basically decide, like, okay, they're going to try to find a draft suitor that has a second round pick and potentially a third round pick for them, maybe even more. But at minimum, you would want to trade down a couple of spots and pick up a second and third, or one of each of those picks. And then maybe some future compensation that's later rounds, potentially. But that's the ideal scenario, I think, for the Titans. Trying to get as many picks in the top 100 is going to be 100% what they should try to do going into this draft. You have a lot of needs. You have wide receiver, you have O-line, you have the defensive line on edge and the interior defensive line. You have linebacker that you need help at, and you have safety that you need help at. That's a lot of holes. Now, some of those you just kind of need good depth pieces, but most of those you need starters at. So for the Titans, can you find a starter at two of those positions at 7 and 38? Certainly you can. But that leaves some other holes on the team. And, pick 109, sure, you might be able to find from pick 100 down. For the most part, you're looking at depth pieces. All your starters are going to be in the top 100 picks, in my opinion. Of course, there's always going to be some studs that shine through. It happens in every single draft. There's late round guys that turn out to be just absolute insane players. And you can't predict that, so we won't know for a while. But you have to go into it trying to acquire as many top 100 picks, in my opinion. Now, I would love Rome Odunze at 7. Malik Neighbors would be my ideal choice. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously. Any of the 3 receivers, either of the top 2 tackles in Joe Alt or Olu Fashanu, or trading down. I mean, I'm happy with all of those positions for the Titans, and that's why I think Rand Carthon and team are probably happy with it as well. I mean, they're not tripping. If they have to sit and pick, they're going to get one of those 5 players I just listed. It's going to happen because we're going to have 3 quarterbacks taken in the first 3 picks. Maybe even in the top 4 picks, depending on what happens there. So the Titans are in prime position. But I think that they probably trade down, acquire a couple more picks, at the very least acquire a 3rd-round pick, even if they're only moving down a couple spots with, like, let's say the Jets. But regardless, the Titans are in good position. Now, if you take Rome Odunze, or let's say Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr., which seem to be the 2 obvious guys, I put Rome Odunze right there with them, personally. But let's say one of the obvious guys, let's say Marvin Harrison Jr. is there. I think universally everyone says that they would take that player if he's there. Let's say he is. So you take Marvin Harrison Jr. at 7. You have a generational wide receiver, an amazing talent that you've added. But now you still have the same problem at the other positions. You don't have your left tackle of the future. And you have a pretty pressing need at on the defensive line at edge or in the interior. So then what do you do at pick 38? Obviously, the board is going to have to fall the way it falls. But if like an edge rusher like Darius Robinson is there, or Chop Robinson is there, for example, you have to consider one of those guys at 38. They shouldn't be there at 38, and they might. Byron Murphy or like a Johnny Newton, an interior defensive lineman who should be gone by no later than pick, the late 20s or 30s, early 30. Then if that guy is there, you might have to consider him at 38 because the value is just too great, and it's a need. It makes it a lot harder, especially if the Titans have to take a tackle. Now, that's the other thing. You take a receiver like Marvin Harrison Jr. and Neighbors at 7, or Odunze, and then you have to look at the tackles there. There's not a ton of there's starting caliber tackles there. You have Patrick Paul, who is really appealing, Kingsley Suamatia, Jordan Morgan. There's a handful of tackles that are interesting at 38 and who would be good players, but not necessarily starting level caliber of player, which is really what you need at pick 38. It's almost a first-round pick. Picking in the top of the 2nd round is picking players who could have and potentially should have gone in the 1st round. That's kind of how you have to see it. So it's interesting. Now, if you go Olu or Joe Alt at pick 7 and the roles reversed, then all of a sudden you go, okay, we didn't get a generational talent at wide receiver. We didn't get one of the top 3 for sure superstars in this league. But there's 15 other guys that we could pick. There's players in the 4th round with pick 109 that we could pick, or 106, I'm forgetting. There's a guy that we can use our 4th round pick to take that could be a contributor day one. There's that much talent in the receiver class. And that's why everybody is leaning so hard at giving the Titans their tackle of the future, and why it makes a tremendous amount of sense for them to do that. Now, they could still trade down, let's say with the Raiders, get their 2nd and their 3rd, give them the 7, maybe pick 109 or whatever, or a later round pick like 146. And then all of a sudden you have enough picks to go tackle, receiver, edge in any combination, which I think is probably what they should do for the first 3 picks. But regardless, you can add a ton of talent at that point. So that's what makes a ton of sense to me. But that's why, depending on where you pick, where your picking position is, that's what's so fascinating to me. Because the Titans have to say, that's what they're talking about right now, by the way. The conversations that are being had in those rooms is they're talking with offensive line coach Bill Callahan. They're talking with wide receiver coach Tyke Tolbert. They're talking with all these different coaches, Denard Wilson, like, okay, if so-and-so is here, like, if we're picking at 7, like, if we pick Dallas Turner, if we pick an edge, if we pick the best edge rusher at 7 and we sticked and picked, like, what would that mean for our team? They're having all of those dialogues now, and they're talking about the receiver. What if we took receiver? What if we didn't go offensive line? Bill Callahan, how do you feel? Well, I really like this guy that we could get in a later round. I bet you I could turn him into a starter. They're having those conversations, and I think it's almost going exactly like that as well. So that's why it feels like a trade down, because adding more picks in the top 100 of a absolutely loaded top 100 draft, I think makes a ton of sense, because they have some serious holes that they could plug in and really be able to turn this thing around in 1 year. But at the same time, if you stick and pick at 7, you're going to get a potential gold jacket player in this draft, sitting at where the Titans are sitting at 7. But I don't hate trading down and taking a Troy Fontenot, or however you pronounce his name, J.C. Latham, Tyler Guyton, one of these guys that could certainly be your future tackle. And then you're also adding significant draft capital. Maybe you go receiver at 38 or edge, whatever. You have that flexibility then. So I think that's consensus. For me, sticky and picky and trading down, I'm always going to take a look at what the offers are. Those are going to change as the draft starts, as players come off the board. Does Arizona trade down? Does J.J. McCarthy slide to pick 6 or 7? Do the Giants take J.J. McCarthy if he slides? Does Michael Penix get taken in the top 10 because someone trades up for him because his stock has risen? There's so many factors and so many outliers that can change everything. And I think it's in Ran Carthon and team's best interest to take a look and basically say, okay, we are going to sit and we're happy with taking any one of these players that falls to us. They're going to decide before draft night in which direction they want to go. Do they want to take one of these receivers, or are they going tackle in the first round? If they're going tackle, then they can trade down. If they're not going tackle and they've decided one of these receivers is their guy, then we're not even going to be talking about them trading down from 7. They're going to be like, no, we're going to stay put because we're going to take one of these guys. For me, I think you consider trading down. You add more picks in the top 100. You bolster a roster that has seen some pretty decent improvement, and you make it even better. So for me, I'm pretty firm on that. But if they stay and pick any of those 5 players I listed, I'd be pretty happy with it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you guys kind of agree, I think that is going to be the draft strategy for the Titans. I don't think anything different. I think a lot of things have pointed to them going skill position. So drafting one of those 3 receivers does not seem outlandish at all. And who knows? Maybe they take the receiver at 7. Maybe they're okay with missing out on one of these top tackles, and they trade down from 38 and they fill other needs, and they look to second wave of free agency to fill the left tackle spot. All-pro left tackle David Bakhtiari is a free agent. All-pro. Like, this guy is a stud. He's a little bit older, but he could definitely be a stopgap for a year or 2 and be the guy. Boom, no issue there. There's other young talent that are developing on the team that are filling other spots of the roster. Right tackle is also an issue. So there's a lot of choices here. The Titans don't have to draft a tackle in the top 40 picks. Did he just say that? He did. I'm just saying. So we'll see. The Titans have a lot of options there, but the overall consensus on my side is that they are absolutely in a power position. This is a good spot to be in if you're the Tennessee Titans. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. I really appreciate you for checking out this video. Let me know if like the unedited, just like get it out there style of video is cool with you guys, because I would much rather do it this way. But I'm a perfectionist. What can I say? I like to edit and make it all fancy. But I really appreciate you guys for checking it out. Drop me a like. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'll get back to you guys there, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.